We were massive overnight, and it was very odd, very hard to compute for a young man, you know? But there was no help. Whereas now, when people join the show, they are taken to sit down with people, and they will explain to them the press intrusion into your life. It could affect your family. They'll dig around. If there's any skeletons in your closet, they may find them and they'll print it. You'll get followed everywhere. This could happen. People will react to you strangely. They get this big talk, but with us, there was nothing. So we were kind of dropped in the middle of the ocean at 15 and left to swim, for sure, you know. It had a massive impact on my mental health. I joined Coronation Street in 1989 by accident. I was wagging school with a friend of mine, Tahi, and he was adamant that we were just going to stay off school for the whole day. So I said, absolutely not. We need to go in. We need to do the register, so at least they think we're there, and then we'll go to Stockport Manchester Arndale Centre and do whatever we were going to do there. And we went in, and no one was there. They were having a big assembly. So we went in, we're at the back of the room, and it was people from ITV looking for the characters Steve and Andy McDonald, for the new McDonald family in Coronation Street. Now this, to me, was like having aliens in the building. People from TV didn't come to Manchester, certainly not to your school. So I went along to this room, room 11A, the English room, where they took photographs of us to see, because I think they had a certain look they were looking for. I had blue eyes, the dad was Irish. That was as simple as it was. There was a few other guys that had their picture taken. Obviously, the guy that played my brother was there. And then we got asked to go back for a couple of improvised rehearsals. And then some guy started talking to us, and we had to stop him and say, sorry, you're talking to us as if we've got the job. And he went, yeah, you've got the job. And I've been there ever since, and no one's found out. There's quite a few in our show that have been there a lot longer. Bill Roach, for instance, 64 years. He's in the Guinness Book of Records for that. My good friend, who plays Ian Beale, he's been in it a bit longer than me, 36, 37 years, might be longer, nearly 40 years maybe. I mean, I didn't want to act at all. I was in the ATC, I wanted to be a pilot in the RAF. Failing that, I wanted to be a technician for Formula One, you know, just the normal things. Or race cars, you know, boy dream stuff, you know. And the reason I went along to this was on the off chance I may get it. Because I'd seen a very nice bright orange Ford Escort Mexico in Loot, and I wanted it. I didn't want to be an actor. It was the fact it was TV, and the TV sounded very much like money to me. I wanted some of that green stuff. I didn't really have any kind of view at all, you know. I was 15 and 1 week old when we started filming, and I just was happy to be there. My very first day, Jill Summers, who played Phyllis Pierce, who was the woman with the blue rings, I'd walked into the green room. The cast wasn't very big then, and she'd gone to wardrobe and had these bloomers, and she put these big bloomers on, and she tucked her skirt into these bloomers, and she bent over in front of me and Nick, who played Andy, and she turned around and says, "Are you looking at my you little?" And from that moment on, I thought, I am gonna love it here. This is so mad. I mean, wow, this old woman. And it just got worse from there on in. And I was just surrounded by these people who were just born to entertain and make people laugh. And that's all I ever wanted to do when I was a kid. I loved my main programs were comedy. I loved making people laugh. Big attention seeker, want to be the funniest in the room. All that was me. And a bit of a show off. And I was surrounded by people who did it professionally. And I was like, wow, this is for me. I loved it. And I still love it to this day. It's great. So yeah, I had to learn on the job. But what was difficult while I was doing that was that everyone around me was expecting me to know what I was doing, and I didn't. And it was hard, you know. We'd go on chat like Saturday morning kids shows, which was presented by, you know, whoever was presenting those at the day, big names. And I was frightened to death. I was like, I don't know what, I had a paper round and now I'm on like I'm on the Big Breakfast, and it was frightening. It was awful. But the downsides of it were there was a lot of attention, which I didn't want. The press, within days of me getting the job, were round at all my neighbours, asking them for any stories of me when I was growing up. I had a friend who I found out 30 years later. No, about 20 years, 20 odd years later, had been leaking stories to the News of the World about me all the time. Kind of made sense while I was always in the papers. I was like, it was him. After he asked me for money. And then, because he hadn't seen him for ages. So he said to me, do you want to come and go for lunch? I said, yeah. So we went to the Manchester Library, weirdly, because he wanted to chat. He wanted money, and I gave him the money. But he was asking me what if I hadn't been an actor, what would I have wanted to do? So I said an oceanographer, because at the time I was really into sharks and whales and just anything about the sea. So I was like, oh, an oceanographer. Next day it was in the paper. So I was like, it's him. And then a paparazzi confirmed it and said, yeah, he was selling stuff. Yeah, it was awful, and, there was a lot of bad, horrible things that happened. The teachers at school were ridiculous. Well, they wouldn't be in a job in today's society. Back then, they were awful. They got away with it. For them, I was earning millions of pounds. Of course, I wasn't. And I was labelled poor little rich boy by them, and there was loads of horrible things that they did. My education finished when I had a fight with my metalwork teacher. I was making a hinge, or he'd asked us to make a hinge. And I got two very long pieces of metal, cylindrical and hollow. And my idea was make the cylindrical bit longer, and then hence, you got a hinge. This thing was huge, these bits of metal. Me being a lazy pig, I was like, I cannot be bothered to put these on the bench and cut them individually. So I put them on this big cutting thing. What you call that? Anyway, I had them in, it was sticking out the door, and he nearly tripped over it, the teacher, and he was going mad. So I went, well, it's just easy. I said, I'll just lob it now, and then it's done then. I'll put the rest on the rack. Just because you're off the TV, was the remark. So I was like, here we go. Because I'd had a long string of teachers being arseholes. So I was like, what's being on TV got to do with a hinge? And it started and it started and it started. And then he starts poking me. Who do you think you are? I was like, I'm making a hinge in metalwork class. What are you going on about? And in the end, I just lost it and pushed him, and he hit all this metal. And I walked out of school and I never went back. I didn't do my GCSEs, didn't do nothing. But it was very, very difficult the first 10 years. Very, very difficult. I mean, as time went on, and of course, because I was 15, I couldn't have the money. It had to go into a trust fund, as it were, until I was old enough to be legally allowed to have it. I had quite a lot of money, more than my friends did. But I spent it all on my friends. It's like, let's go out, I'll pay. I paid my mate's student loan off. I mean, many ways, later on in life when I got a therapist, he was like saying, look, it sounds like you were buying friendships then. He's probably right. But I used the money to basically have a good time, and I wanted all my mates with me. So I paid for everything. So my analogy for being famous was, if you've got a game show and there's a guy who's going to win a Ferrari, Lamborghini, whatever it is, beautiful supercar, everybody at home and the whole studio audience are behind him and they want him to win that car. So everyone is behind the guy and they want him to win. Everyone at home, everyone in the studio audience. And he wins and everyone's like, hey. Then the next day, he's driving down the road in his Ferrari and everyone thinks he's a wanker. That's our society. They want everyone to win, but when they see the person with the nice thing, they don't like it. Well, I think I was treated a lot different. I remember going out with some of the girls from work. Women, really. I was a bit younger than them. And the people were shouting at me and shouting obscenities and all this kind of stuff. And they couldn't believe it. They're like, we don't get this. Not half as much as you do. And I seem to get it more. And I think that's because I was in people's psyche a bit more, because the press were all over me all the time. And now I know why, because a friend of mine was telling them everything we were doing. If you're in the newspapers all the time, or you're just everywhere everyone looks, then, you know, you're in people's minds all the time. And I hated it. I hated the fame. I don't understand why anyone would want to be famous. It is the downside of the job. At Stage One, which used to be in the centre of Manchester, there'd be people on the gate all the time asking for photographs, sometimes asking for a kiss, which was horrible. There was a certain elderly lady who always had biscuits around her mouth, and she'd go, "Give us a kiss." She'd be like, "No." It was, weird days. But yeah, it was bizarre. You never get used to it. I mean, kids, I remember driving out of work, it wasn't that long ago, and there was a young lad outside, and you usually go past these people because they all come over to the car. I'm massively into my cars. They're my thing. And I don't want people with bags with metal things all crowding around it and scratching the hell out of it. So I'm like, no. So anyway, I drove up and I saw it was a young lad, and I got halfway home and I felt so bad. I had to turn around, go back to work, and I found him and I went, "Come here." I said, "Did you want an autograph?" He said, yeah. So I signed it for him. And then some adults came over, and that's when I went, "Not you lot." And I left. "I'll do it for the lad, but you lot are weird." So I went, but yes, so some people are very strange about it. I remember I was on holiday with my mates, and somebody literally grabbed hold of me, dragged me across the street. I didn't know what was going on, and then held me while they took a photograph, and then they walked off. And people would do that. They'd drag you from one end of the pub to the other. "Look who I've got." Very, very weird. Very, very weird. People think you're public property. You think they've got the God-given right to come and sit at your table while you're sat with your family having a meal. I've always kind of been very good with everybody. I've never really said no. There's been a couple of occasions when I've said no when I'm with my kids, when they were very young, and they are so put out by it and so annoyed by it that it's just a lot easier just to say yes. That's not like everybody who's watching this, come and do it though. If people are just genuinely lovely, polite people, I'm really, really sorry. I mean, that's the one they go, "I can see you're on holiday with your children." I'm like, "But you're going to come over anyway. I can see you're really having some private time and you want to be left alone." Well, then. But, you know, they do it anyway. It's just a lot easier. And I kind of get it as well. I'm pretty sure I sat next to Sean Connery in Spain once, or it was definitely his doppelganger. I was beside myself being a massive James Bond fan. And so I was like, I had to grab myself and go, "This is what happens." And I was like, oh, yeah, I need to forgive people. The best story for me was I'm good mates with Craig Charles, Red Dwarf and everything. And of course, he was in Corrie. He was in a pub, he was reading his book, and a guy came over, he said, "Craig," and Craig's like, "Oh, yes, mate." And he's going, no, look, I don't want an autograph, I don't want to disturb you. But can you do me a favour? When you leave, can you just go, "Dave, see you later, mate." Just dead cash, as if we know each other. My mates will be like, "Oh my God, how do you know Craig?" and all this. And he went, "Yeah, all right, no problem." So he walked out and he went, "Dave," and he went, "Oh, f*** off, Craig, not now." And Craig went, "It was brilliant. I just had to go, fair enough, man. That was really good." The thing was for us when we started, it was new, not just for us, but it was new for Granada TV as it was then. They didn't know what was happening, all of it, because you didn't really felt that you could say anything because you thought this was the norm for everyone. There wasn't any help in place for anything anyway. And it was new territory for them. I mean, we were getting like a bin bag of mail a day. It was crazy. We did a personal appearance with Take That. And there was "I Love Simon" t-shirts on the front row because they started at the same time. It was like, okay, this is weird. We were massive overnight, and it was very odd and very, very hard to compute for a young man, you know. But there was no help. Whereas now, when people join the show, they are taken to sit down with people, and they will explain to them the press intrusion into your life. It could affect your family. They'll dig around. If there's any skeletons in your closet, they may find them and they'll print it. You'll get followed everywhere. This could happen. People will react to you strangely. They get this big talk, but with us, there was nothing. So we were kind of dropped in the middle of the ocean at 15 and left to swim, for sure, you know. It had a massive impact on my mental health. Looking back, yeah. It makes me very upset for the only reason that I've got kids the same age now. And the thought of them going through what I went through is horrible. Yes, it's not nice. My dad was a policeman, so you can get therapy for family through the police. And I did see a couple of therapists, but they didn't know what to do with it. They had no idea. And it was only years later, when I was about 2015, when I got a therapist and I started talking, that it was all. I realised it was okay to not be okay. Because I kept talking about it, he was like, "This has been pretty for you, isn't it?" I was like, "Yeah, that's a bit actually, yeah." Because I knew I had no qualifications. I was like, "What am I going to do?" And weirdly, now look, I might be wrong. I might be accusing people of doing something that's not true. So if I am, I hold my hands up. But also, it seemed that the bad publicity was good publicity. So at that time, it was like I couldn't do anything wrong, even though seemed to be doing everything wrong. And I stayed in a job when I was getting paid, so I stayed, yeah, and got very drunk. That seemed to help quite a lot. I self-medicated like mad, yeah. It was great. It never became a problem. I mean, in the eyes of family and friends, they may say it was a problem. I never deemed it as a problem, although looking back, it was crazy how we got through. But yeah, the money was coming in, and the parties carried on. A very good friend of mine, Charlie Lawson, who played my dad, he said to me, "Look, acting," because he knew I didn't want to do this. He knew I wanted to go water skiing on beaches around the world and all that kind of stuff. A beach bum was my dream. But he said, "Look, when you get," he said, "it's unfortunate for you that you've never really learned how to act on stage, or you've never really gone out into the world of acting and done other jobs. You've only ever done this." He said, "Because it's actually really, really good. It's a tremendous vocation." And he said, when you get it right, when you get a scene and it comes from here, here, and here, all at the same time, he said, the buzz you get from it is incredible. And I did get that a couple of times in scenes that were very emotional. People had to cry, it's all this. And I was like, okay, I get it, And once I got what my job was, and I started working at it a bit more and understanding it a bit more, that's when I was like, okay, I'm a lot more comfortable in what I'm doing. And then when I met my wife, things need to get a lot better from there as well, because she was like, "You ain't drinking that much and being with me." So I went, okay, I'd rather have that than that. I had 9 months off a long time ago because I was very unwell. But again, it was around about the time where people weren't really sure about mental health. It was all very new. But they could tell something wasn't right. I got 9 months off there and presented the big breakfast. How I did that, I've no idea, because I was bat crackers. I was not a well man. And it was the most frightening experience of my life. But yeah, in 2015, I got diagnosed with an anxiety disorder. I just couldn't work out what was wrong with me. I was constantly going to hospital. I was having brain scans. I was having cameras up and down me. I was having ear, nose, and throat guys check my brain. I was having everything, ECGs, heart monitors. I was just always unwell. And then somebody said it may be anxiety. So I went to go and see a psychiatrist. And I spoke to him, and within minutes he went, "Yep, you've got an anxiety disorder." Put me on a course of medication, got a therapist, and I was fine. It took me about 6 months to get out of that, and yeah, it was horrible. But the psychiatrist thought I'd had it for about 20 odd years. He said, "I think it started when you joined the show, when all the crap started with the teachers and the press and the general public." He said, because I had kids, and the kids were starting to pick up on it. And my children were starting to mention that they felt anxious. I got so worried that they were picking up on my verbal stuff and my persona and everything, and we're thinking that because it's their home life, that it was normal for them to say stuff like, "I'm having a panic attack, I feel anxious." I was going, oh my God. And that just quadrupled this underlying anxiety disorder in me. I mean, I always put it down to being, my lifestyle. That's what I put it down to. And it was like, nope. Because, I did drink, smoke, for 6 months, was still feeling I was being chased by a flipping saber-toothed tiger, being lay in bed. Anyway, yeah, I got completely looked at by all these different doctors and everything. They were going, yeah. But I mean, it just seemed to ramp up, yeah. It was all to do with having kids, having responsibility, and them being witness to it, and me not wanting them to be witness to it. And there was a lot going on. And it just kind of pushed me over the edge, really. Just so it clicked. I remember ringing my boss, and he said, are you okay? I went, no. He said, what sort? I said, I'm in my car. I'm ready to go to work. I can't get off the drive. I physically can't drive the car off the drive. I can't do it. I can't do it. And he went, right. So we had talks, and a doctor came, ITV's doctor came, who was the Royal Family's doctor, I think, some guy from the Navy. And he suggested I have the 6 months off. The break was needed. I loved it, because initially they said, well, ideally we could do with you back at this point, and it was like being given a goalpost to get mentally better for, and that didn't work for me. Luckily for me, the doctor was like, no, this cannot be that. It has to be 6 months at least. And, you know, Corrie were brilliant. You know, they were always asking if I was okay, you know, when I was supposed to come back to work. Are you sure you're okay? They're very, very good at that place with people with problems, and they were great, very supportive. But no, the time off was great. Yeah, it really gave me time to have a rest. You know, it's been a long time, constant work. And we used to do 12, 14-hour days back in the day, you know. I think they're 11 now for health and safety reasons. But, you know, I was going from big storyline to big storyline, big storyline to big storyline. And I was busy. I was never at home. And, you know, after, you know, getting up at 7:15, 6:30, and coming home 7, 8 o'clock at night on a Friday, I wanted to go out and, you know, de-stress. So I was very rarely home. And that took a toll. It's given me a massive different view on mental health, to the point where I've been desperately trying to do a program on it myself. But also what I noticed when I was going through it, that I was very lucky in the fact to be able to afford a therapy, to be able to afford to see a psychiatrist. I went to a place in Switzerland, which I was very lucky to go to. Not everyone can afford that. And the NHS, bless them, as much as I love the NHS, are just too overrun to be able to look at everybody. If anybody, you know, the waiting list for mental health is months, years. I thought I'd found a way through it. It has creeped back recently. I have been having the odd anxious moments, but I can now ride them, as I call them, and I can let them wash through me, which is something that I learned with the help of others. But oh God, I won't wish it on my worst enemy. It's awful. It's awful. It's horrible to be so frightened for no reason, and you don't know why. So what I want to do was make a program that brought the therapy to the home. Everybody watches TV, right? So let's give them the tools through whatever program we could put together so they can help themselves. That was the plan. No one wants to do it. Can we do I'm a celebrity, I've got an anxiety disorder? No, I don't want to do that, no. I mean, for me, you know, like I said, the first 10 odd years, you know, if I was out and a bloke came over to me, that immediately meant, I was going to get beaten up. But, you know, after I did a storyline about mental health problems, being depressed, you know, the same kind of looking blokes would come over, and I'm like, oh, here we go. And they go, I really want to thank you. I saw a lot of myself in your character's problems. I've been to the doctor. He's given me this, or he's given me that advice, and I'm a lot better now, and thank you very much. So I was like, wow, that's worked. These storylines that are these very big issue-led stories, they're working. And yeah, it was a proud moment, you know. It's also nice not to get a punch in the face. I wouldn't say no to being in Coronation Street playing Steve for the rest of my life. No, I wouldn't. You know, a lovely friend of mine, beautiful man, Bill Roach, has been doing it 64 years now. And for me, it was never about ambition. It was never about treading the boards and trying new things. For me, it was always a job, you know, a regular wage. And I love what I do. I love the people that I work with. And yeah, as long as they'll have me and pay me, I'll stay. So, I mean, I've been into ghosts since I was a kid. Probably since Ghostbusters came out. Who doesn't want to be a Ghostbuster? And I'm very interested in life after death and things like that. And I think all humans are in a way because, you die and that's it. No, I don't want that. So people want to believe, they have faith, all this kind of stuff. Ghosts very much part of that, of course. So, yeah, me and some very like-minded friends want to set up a YouTube channel and go out and investigate ghosts. So I've got a guy from work who works with me, a guy called Dan Brocklebank, and probably the best ghost investigator there is, medium. He's an ordained minister, a guy called Ian Lawman. The Yorkshire Exorcist, Help My House is Haunted, a great guy. Me and him are very good friends. All three of us being pals, it should be good. So yeah, there's that going on. I saw something the other day in the kitchen. He was just peeping around the corner at me. And I thought it was my eldest. He's in sixth form now, so he gets a 4-day weekend, the lucky thing. So I said, Alfie, have you just appeared around the corner? And he was upstairs in the shower. So I was like, oh, okay. So you'd think knowing an exorcist, that'd be all right, wouldn't you? But no, which leads me to, on the topic of the ghost, there was a smoking room at the old place, and I was in a bad way. And there was an old guy smoking a pipe, very old clothes. And he said, not like Victorian clothes, but, like what your granddad would wear. And he said to me, it gets easier as you get older, Simon, it'll be all right. And when I walked out, I said, who was that guy? And they went, what guy? And apparently there was no one there. But that helped me. So I think that's what I'd say to my younger self. It gets easier as you get older. It'll be all right. I've been lucky, really. There's been downs, some horrible times. But the other times are just so outweigh those. And you've got to have the lows to appreciate the highs, I guess, haven't you? My thoughts are, if I'd have gone the other route, and God knows what I'd have been, arrested or dead, I think I'd just still be me. I'd be me with different friends and in a different place, but I'd still be me. If I was given the choice, I'd go this way, obviously. So I could have my wife and my kids,